There's a decision in your business that you've already made, and you know that you've already made it. It was a considered decision, but you find yourself going over everything once again in your mind and remaking that decision, maybe even more than once. That pattern has a name, and in this context, it's not indecision. Maybe it looks like this. You decide on a direction for your business or its marketing, a platform, an offer, a particular way of showing up. And for a few weeks, things feel fine. You're doing it. And then something changes. You have a slow week, or you read someone else's post about results that they're getting doing something entirely different to what you're doing. Your inbox is quiet, apart from the people who are telling you everything that they can help you do better about how you're showing up, the platform you're on, or your offer. And before you've really realized it's happening, you're back at the question that you thought you'd already answered, revisiting decisions that you've already made. Or maybe it's even more subtle than that. You make a decision, you don't unmake it exactly, but you hold it loosely. You don't commit to it just in case. So action you take is kind of hedging your bets. The message that's a bit more careful and diluted, the offer that's priced a little lower than you decided you wanted it to be. The post that goes out later than you planned because you kept having to rewrite it. Or maybe you look back over several months and realize that there were decisions that you made that, because you never committed to them, didn't have the time to gain traction or tell you anything useful. None of this is a character flaw or a sign that you're not up to business. And it's not indecision in the ordinary sense of the word. There's a specific structural reason this happens. And once you understand it, you can actually work with it. And that's what we're talking about today. So grab a cuppa and let's chat. Welcome back to this channel. I'm Lyndon, and I talk about entrepreneurial leadership for women in online business. Everything that I teach comes from my own lessons learned over 9 or so years now of being in the online business space, including all the things that took me such a long time to understand about why businesses stall. So let's get into it. Here's what's actually happening when you keep revisiting a decision that you've already made. If you've been watching this channel from the beginning, you'll have heard me talk about outsourcing authority, the tendency that we have as business owners to look externally for confirmation that we're on the right track, rather than acting from our own discernment and assessment. We talked about where that comes from employment conditioning, the brain's normal threat response, the particular weight of societal conditioning around women and authority, all of that. But what I want to talk about today is what outsourced authority actually looks like in practice on your average Wednesday morning when you're sitting with a decision that you made 3 weeks ago and you're starting to wonder if it was actually the right decision. Because here's the thing, when a decision has been made from a genuinely grounded place, from your own thinking and your own evaluation of what your business needs, and when you trust that that's the way that business decisions should be made, it holds differently under the pressure, the day-to-day pressure. It doesn't mean you don't feel doubt, you do, but the doubt doesn't automatically become a reason to reopen the question, because there's an internal reference point underneath it, a foundation of entrepreneurial leadership. When a decision hasn't been made from that place, when it's been made while still even slightly scanning for external confirmation that it's correct, then the moment things feel uncertain, the search for confirmation reactivates. It's not always conscious. You're not necessarily sitting and thinking, well, I need someone to tell me that I'm doing the right thing. It's not like that. It feels more like a genuine reconsideration, like you're being thorough, thinking through all the angles, like you're staying flexible and being responsive. And what makes it even more difficult is that, yes, sometimes that's true. But as always, it's developing the discernment and trust within yourself to know the difference that's the skill. And that's actually the distinction worth spending a moment on, because it matters. There's genuine reconsideration when you've been going in a direction long enough to have real data from your own business. You've evaluated that data from a considered place and it's telling you something. That's the fifth stage of the business building cycle that we talked about in earlier parts of this channel, evaluation. It's essential and it's what informs the next decision. But that is different than what happens when you reopen a decision before it's had any real time to tell you anything. When the trigger isn't data from your own business, it's discomfort in the day-to-day. The discomfort of the gap between action and result, the discomfort of not knowing yet. And that discomfort is real, it's uncomfortable precisely because the business hasn't confirmed anything either way, which means your brain is doing what brains do, which is looking for a way to resolve the uncertainty. And the easiest way to resolve the feeling of what if I was wrong is to go back to the decision and relitigate it. The problem is that every time you do that, every time you reopen a settled decision, not because there's evidence asking you to do so, but because the discomfort got uncomfortable enough, you reset the clock on your business's progress, not just in the obvious sense of losing momentum that was beginning to build, but because you've also chipped away at something else, your own sense that your decisions are reliable. Each time you walk a decision back before it has had the chance to tell you something real, you add to a record or evidence log, not deliberately, but you add to one that says, my decisions don't quite hold up. And that makes the next decision harder to stick to, and the one after that. And that's when the pattern becomes genuinely costly, not just in wasted time and energy, but in what it does to your ability to lead your business. Business is personal, and the way that you relate to your own decisions is part of how you run everything. So, what does it actually look like when you've done enough work on this that the pattern starts to shift? You still feel the uncertainty, that doesn't go away, but you develop enough of an internal reference point that you can recognize what kind of uncertainty it is. You know the difference between uncertainty that's asking you to genuinely reconsider because something in your own evaluation has flagged something that doesn't feel right, and uncertainty that is simply the discomfort of being in the gap. And that distinction changes what you do with it. What that looks like in practice, again, on that ordinary Wednesday morning where something feels wobbly, maybe you're having a quiet week, a comparison moment, whatever it is, instead of the whole decision reopening, you just notice it and recognize it for what it is. You feel it and you keep going anyway. The decision stays settled because you know you're the one who made it in the first place, not because the doubt didn't show up, but because you're no longer dependent on the doubt being absent in order to take action. That's a totally different experience of running a business. And it is an ongoing muscle to build. I have been working on this. We've been working with my Build the Business Owner framework for a while now. And I still had the wobble a few weeks into this channel when everything was new. And I felt all fingers and thumbs with video setup and editing. And my brain said, well, maybe YouTube isn't the right channel for you to market your business on. It would certainly have felt a lot better to go back to something more familiar, or even to try something that I didn't already know was difficult. But that would have been a decision based on nothing but discomfort and no visible evidence of results. Fortunately, however, I've developed my own ability to manage myself through that experience, largely because I know what's happening, what's causing it, and that this sort of questioning is a false flag. So when you do have a slow week, patchy results, quiet inbox, the kind of week that you used to wonder if everything needed to change, just note it, be aware of it, but don't read one difficult week as evidence that decisions that you've made are wrong. Build enough of a track record with yourself to know that 1 week isn't data. And when you encounter something in the online space, someone else's approach, someone else's results, just look at them without being pulled away from yourself. Take it in, run it through your own filter, and decide whether it's relevant to you and what you're building. The key shift that I want to leave you with from this video is this then. The decisions that you keep revisiting aren't unresolved because they're wrong. they're unresolved because the internal reference point that would allow them to hold hasn't been built yet. And that reference point is buildable. It's what develops when you make a decision, stick to it, and let it run long enough to tell you something real. So, something worth sitting with this week. Think about a decision that you've made and then unmade in the last month or so, not necessarily one that you've fully jettisoned or abandoned. Sometimes it's just a decision that you're holding a bit loosely, not quite committing to. What is it that you're looking for or waiting for that would allow that decision to stick and settle? That question will tell you something useful about where you are right now and the entrepreneurial leadership work that is available to you. Next week, I'm going somewhere that might feel like a bit of a departure from this, but it really isn't. I'm going to talk about how I actually use both logic and intuition in a real business decision, not just as a concept, but what each one contributes and how I work with them together in practice. If you've ever wondered whether leaning into your intuition is serious enough to count as a business strategy, that's what we'll be getting into. The question that I just left you with, what are you looking for or waiting for that would allow your decisions to settle? That is exactly the territory Recalibrate, your 30-day practice to confident decision making, works in. If what we've been talking about today just feels all too familiar, if you recognize the pattern and you're ready to actually work on it rather than just think about it, then Recalibrate is a practical, no-nonsense offer that I created specifically for this. And the link is in the video description. So leave me your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your decision-making challenges below. And if this way of thinking about your business is giving you something useful, a different lens, something that's making things feel a bit clearer, subscribing means that you'll have the next video when it comes out. These videos are designed to build on each other, and next week's goes somewhere that I think you'll find genuinely interesting and useful. I'd love to see you there. Bye for now.